Hi, everybody. This is Arkady Frekhtman. I'm a New York City personal injury trial attorney, and welcome to Last Week Tonight Live, where we are here live answering your questions and answering your comments and answering your questions. And today was a special live because I had to go to a client's house, and we have a trial date set for April the 15th, which is Monday. And I was at his house, and we prepared for the trial. We got to know him, his wife, even saw his little dog that he has, and got to know a little bit about him, his biography. And now we're really well prepared for the trial. It's probably not going to go on Monday. It's probably going to go in a few weeks. But yeah, so then after that, I was just doing a few consult calls from the car, answering questions. And now I finally was able to snag a laptop and do this live. So, yeah. So, let me know what questions you guys have. I'm happy to answer any questions and to be helpful. So let's see. I think we have a question already from a Brandy, and it says here: 3 herniated discs hit by an 18-wheeler with 3 steroid injections in Texas. The car was totaled. Surgery recommended, but not having it. How much do you think I can get? Okay, so yeah, so you were hit by an 18-wheeler and it happened in Texas, and you have 3 steroid injections, and it's a total loss on the car. So it's obviously a serious crash, a major crash. So how much you could get for that? I mean, it's hard for me to say. I would say, look, based on New York, I'm from New York, so I'm familiar with New York values. So based on New York, I would say a case like that could be worth maybe, anywhere from 150 up to 500,000 plus. Now in Texas, depending on which city in Texas, some parts of Texas are more plaintiff friendly. Some parts may be more conservative. Also, it depends on when the crash happened, whether it's a brand new case that could be built up with additional medical care, or if it's an old case and it's already going to trial, let's say in a month, then it would be different because now you can't really do much to change it. You see what I'm saying? So a lot of that depends on that. But yeah, feel free to just text me. It's 347-566-9595, and I'm happy to do a personal consult. That way we could chat. It's free, it's confidential, and I could, offer some guidance. I've been doing a bunch of those, and it's helpful because sometimes people have questions, and some people don't have a lawyer. Like they just got into a crash, whether it's a week ago or a month ago, and they want to know which lawyer to find. So what I could do is I could speak with them. I could, if I know a lawyer in their area, like in their city, I could give them the best lawyer. And if I don't know a lawyer, then what I could also do is I can, um, research by the county or by the city and see what the verdicts have been for example, a truck crash with herniated discs in that city, and then tell you, hey, these are the highest verdicts. And sometimes you see, hey, which lawyers are getting these highest verdicts. Sometimes it's the same lawyers over and over again. So then you could say, wait a minute, maybe I should be calling these guys. They're getting 17 million or whatever it is, 5 million, 4 million. They keep getting these $1 million verdicts in this particular city. So that's one way to do it. So yeah, we could try to do it that way. And then other people, they have a lawyer. Sometimes they're happy with their lawyer. Sometimes they have a lawyer and they don't know. They think, hey, is my lawyer a real trial lawyer? So I could do the same thing. I could plug in a lawyer, and I've been doing that for people. I've been plugging in a lawyer's name and then telling people, hey, these are the verdicts that this particular individual has obtained. So this is a trial lawyer, or sometimes people think they have a trial lawyer, right? So they think, oh, I have a trial lawyer. I have a serious, truck crash. It's going to be worth like $1 million. And then I type it up. I look at the lawyer, and wait a minute, this guy has one case and it's for $8,000, and they've never had anything else. Like, wait, you know what I mean? So that's not so good. That if that's really, then it's not really a lawyer. It's more like a liar. Because come on, they're holding themselves out as a trial lawyer, but they have one case and it's $8,000. They're not going to get full value. Okay, so let's see what other cases, what other questions. Here's a question from Big Mac. Well, it just says herniated disc with radiculopathy to the hips. Okay, yeah, that does happen. That does happen because when you have a herniated disc at L5S1, the radiating pain will travel down to the legs and the hips and in that sacrum. And there's actually something known as, I believe it's called the horse's tail in the sacral iliac joint, because there you have something known as the horse's tail. It's just a lot of nerves, and it looks like a horse's tail, so it's called the horse's tail. So you could get a lot of radiating or traveling pain down there. And he also says, how does returning to work a couple of years after an accident affect the future lost wage? And how does that relate to pain and suffering? Since returning isn't easy, it's hard to get through the day. Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, basically, if you return to work, and you start getting your salary again, then you can't get lost wages, right? Because lost salary means you're not working. And if you can't work at all, now you can get future lost wages. If you return to work and you get a salary, but you have to take more frequent breaks or a different kind of job where you make less money, that's known as diminution in value, meaning you're still working, you're just making less. So I used to make 100,000, but now I'm making 50,000. So I can get the difference. The 50,000 is my loss. And the way it relates to pain and suffering, it really doesn't. It's a different category. So you have economic damages like lost wages, and then you have pain and suffering. Pain and suffering is more non-economic. It's your pain, your suffering, your loss of enjoyment of life. It's more like the human damages, right? And then economics are your lost salary, your wages, your overtime, your fringe benefits, and it could also be your medical expenses. Like, for example, if you need a fusion and the fusion costs 150,000, or if you need physical therapy visits, prescriptions, future medical appointments, then you have a doctor talk about the cost of those in your city, and then you have an economist extrapolate and say, with inflation and everything, for example, physical therapy, one visit could be $100, but you might need 3 a week for the rest of your life. And if you're in your 30s, hey, that could be by itself, that could be hundreds and hundreds of thousands. Sometimes we get future medicals that are over 2 million, in the many, many millions just on future medicals. But that's a really good question. Yeah, thank you for asking that. Okay, let's see what other questions we have. Lost in Awareness says, is there a difference in value if your doctor didn't necessarily recommend surgery for your injury, but your injury requires surgery to fix? I mean, if your doctor didn't recommend surgery, but if another doctor does recommend surgery, you could listen to the second opinion of the other doctor. And then if you get the surgery, the value will be higher. Now, if you have a recommendation for surgery, meaning some doctor, it doesn't have to be that doctor, any doctor, right, says you need surgery, but you don't get it, that's known as a medical need or a necessity, medical necessity for surgery. You could still get money, but it's going to be less, right? Because you haven't actually done it. Actually doing it means you've actually incurred the damages. It's happened. Whereas if you say you're going to do it, well, you may do it, you may not, right? So you can increase the value. Like basically the worst thing, I guess, in terms of money, the worst thing is not doing anything, right? Because then you get soft tissue money, which is very low. If you have the medical need, you get more. And if you do it, you get the most. So I guess that's the easy way to answer it. Okay, and then Air Congo says, hi, Arkady. I got product liability with 2 defendant post-concussion in Washington State. How much cost my case? Yeah, I mean, I couldn't really tell you just based on that. It depends on what type of product liability, what's the liability, what was wrong with the product, how were you, injured. Post-concussion syndrome is could be a type of traumatic brain injury if it's worked up the right way. It just depends, so I couldn't tell you exactly, what it's worth just based on that. But you could text me 347-566-9595. And then let's see, what other questions do we have? So we did this question, I believe, about returning to work. And then Richard says, hello, we settled. They are going to set an amount for MSA. What is the average they make you set aside? I mean, there's not really an average. I believe that's a Medicare set aside. So what you're basically doing is you're setting aside an amount for Medicare because you think Medicare might have a lien. So a lien just means that they want a piece of the pie, right? So Medicare paid for your medical care, right? Medical treatment. They paid money. And under the rules, under the federal law, they're required to get that back. Well, we don't know what the amount is yet. I guess they're going to tell you later. Maybe it's in process, or it's a little bit bureaucracy with Medicare because it's the federal government. So it takes a while for them, sometimes 90 days or 120 days just to tell you. So because of that, it's known as a Medicare set aside, where you set aside an amount and then you're going to pay them So basically, it's not really an average. It just has to, you have to see what they're claiming. And then sometimes they claim a high amount, and then you find that a lot of the charges that they're claiming are not even related to your injury. Like you might be getting unrelated treatment for something else, like, I don't know, like kidneys or whatever, or gallstones, nothing to do with the injury. So then, a good paralegal or a good lien coordinator could exclude all that, and that would save you a lot of money. So make sure you do it the right way. Okay. And then Rishi says, if you have a witness telling your human story, does the other side get to question them? Also, when do you have to notify that you have someone as a witness? Okay, yeah. So that's a great question. I mean, the other side does get to question them, right? Because what you're basically doing is you're finding people from your life, like friends, family, coworkers, neighbors, that are helping to tell your story, that know about what your life was like before you got into this, let's say, crash or fall, the incident, and then what your life is like after and how your life has changed. So you go ahead and you exchange them. Now, the way I like to do it is I tell my clients, hey, tell me everything, right? Tell me their name, their email, their cell phone. But I don't have to give all that to the defendants, right? All I have to do is 30 days before trial, or more than 30 days before trial, I have to give them just the name and the address. So I give them like John Smith, 123 Main Street, whatever, New York City, New York. That's it. Or really, really, really general. And they can. I don't even have to tell them what kind of witness it is. I mean, that's sometimes, not for these, because these are damages witnesses, right? They're only for damages. So you don't even have to necessarily tell them. I mean, sometimes I do. I tell them, hey, these are damages witnesses. They never really question these people. I mean, maybe one lawyer out of 1,000 will do a deposition, but it's good if they do a deposition. Just, you can meet with these people, right? Because there's no prohibition against you as an attorney meeting with these people, prepping them, and then they'll do a great job in the deposition, and then it'll lead to a higher settlement. You see what I'm saying? Or it'll lead to a higher verdict if it goes to trial. But 99.9%, they don't question them, the defendants, and then you just have all these witnesses, and let's say you have like 10 witnesses. Okay, this guy's going to tell this story about you fishing. This guy's going to tell this story about you playing soccer with your kids. This guy's going to tell a story about cooking and how you can't cook and you love to cook. This one's going to tell a story about Thanksgiving last year and how your pain prevented you from enjoying, seeing your family over Thanksgiving, whatever it is, right? And it's so powerful because the number one defense that the insurance companies love to use at trial is to say that you are a liar, a cheater, and a fraud. You are a malingerer, right? You're trying to win the lawsuit lottery, that it's all like fake and you're not so hurt and you're trying to come into court and get a payday, right? Now, if you are the only one that's talking about your own injuries, the jury could possibly believe them, right? But if you have 10 different witnesses and none of these people even know each other, some of them are your neighbors, one of them could be your dry cleaner, another one could be your mailman, another one could be like your, I don't know, your coworker, your next door neighbor, whatever it is, right? How are all these people lying, right? It's impossible. So it's such a beautiful thing. They come to court, each one tells a story for just 5 minutes. You get them on and off the stand real quick. It's almost like a movie. You're a director. You can make any kind of movie you want about your life. It's so, so powerful. I love doing that. And then, they have no defense to it. They're not going to, what are they going to cross-examine him? No, you didn't, go fishing before the accident, or no, you didn't try to fish, but now you can't fish because he's so hurt. There's no defense. That's why it's such a beautiful thing. It's so powerful. And you could use that to get, many millions of dollars. You could use that to get full justice. So I highly recommend that. Okay. Let's see. What other questions do we have? Darren Proctor says, when do they do surveillance on you after the deposition? I mean, they don't, usually they don't. They don't usually do surveillance. Now, they can do surveillance, so you have to be careful. But essentially, like whatever you testified in your deposition that you can't do, just don't do that, right? Just live on, with integrity and honestly and truthfully as per your sworn testimony, because you swore to tell the truth, nothing but the truth. So, basically don't lie. Like if you go into a deposition and you say, hey, I can't, go to the supermarket and carry bags. And then a week later, you go to the supermarket and you're carrying heavy bags, and they have a guy who's, videotaping you and getting you, they're going to use that against you to say, look, page 34, line 17, this particular individual testified under sworn oath that they can't go to the supermarket and carry heavy bags. Now, look, I have this video, play the videotape. And then you see you going into like Costco with these heavy bags or whatever, supermarket. So that's not good. So just don't do that. As long as, you're not lying, as long as you're not doing anything inconsistent with your own testimony, you should be fine. So you shouldn't worry about surveillance. Like I had surveillance on that case that I did in the Bronx earlier. It was in August, right? So I guess it was last year, August of 2023. I had that case in the Bronx, and they had surveillance, but they had surveillance of my guy driving his car. Then he stopped. Then he got out of the car. He opened the trunk, and he got like a piece of paper. And then he got back in the car. I'm like, well, we never said he couldn't drive. Yeah, he could walk. He could press a button on his remote, for the car to open the trunk. He could take a piece of paper. Yeah, he could hold a piece of paper. We never said he couldn't. So we're like, okay, please use the surveillance. Who cares? I'll actually use the surveillance against you because I'm sure there were other outtakes that this videographer who was, surveilling and stalking my client, basically spying on my client for days and days. I'm sure there were other videos that he got where my client was in pain, where my client was using a cane, where my client was using assistive devices. But guess what? He didn't use those videos. He left them on the cutting room floor. I wonder why. Why don't we get the outtakes? Why don't we demand in discovery, because you could do it, right? All of the video and look at the unedited video. You see what I'm saying? So you could do a lot with that. So I don't really worry about surveillance. Okay, and then KCV says, I was rear-ended and now I have tinnitus. I saw that veterans with tinnitus receive $165 a month for disability. Is that a good valuation for pain and suffering settlement calculation? I mean, I'm not familiar with that. I'm not sure how they receive that. That might be a disability lawyer. So you might have to speak to a disability lawyer, because I just do personal injury, meaning like an event, right? Like a truck crash, a trip and fall, a ceiling collapse, a construction accident, like a fall from a ladder or a scaffold, things like that, like a traumatic event. And then that leads to pain and suffering. I don't really deal with disability, so I couldn't tell you if it's good or bad. I would defer to a disability lawyer. Okay. And then Richard B says, is that money I could never touch about the Medicare? Well, I guess like if you have to pay it to Medicare, then you shouldn't touch it. But then once you know the amount and once Medicare takes the amount, then maybe if whatever amount doesn't get allocated to Medicare, maybe you could get some of it back. I would speak to your lawyer about that. Okay, and then Lost in Awareness says, in your opinion, which one is more likely to settle for the 500,000 policy limits? Great, well-known trial lawyer, toss-up case, or a settlement mill, inexperienced lawyer, great case? 500,000 policy limit. I mean, it's hard for me to say. That's like a very, difficult question. But I mean, if you're asking me who I would use a great, trial lawyer. It's always better to use a good trial lawyer, because a good trial lawyer is the best way to get a settlement, right? Because they see that you're a good trial lawyer. They see your records. They know that you're formidable and you could go to court and get many, many millions of dollars. So then they're going to offer you a higher amount. As opposed to if you have a mill, they're going to know, well, these guys don't go to trial, right? They're going to look at their records and say, these guys have thousands and thousands of cases. They have this one lawyer who's gone to trial. He's gotten 0 and 0 and 0, and then 2,000. And then one time he got 8,000. So like, what are the odds that he's going to go to court now and he's going to hit us for $1 million? Look, he's never done it in his whole life. So what are the odds we're going to be the first one, right? Pretty low. So let's give him 8,000. That's the most he's ever won in court. And even though the case could be worth $1 million, right? Well, why should they give you more, right? If you've never done it, you have to prove yourself. But if someone has a track record, hey, this guy goes to court, he got $1 million, he got $2 million, he got $3 million, he got even like, he has, trial partners that have even gotten like, 20 million, 30 million. Well, now they're going to say, wow, we have to pay, because if we don't pay, then they're going to go to court and they're going to hit us. So it's all about, for them, it's all about protecting their money, protecting their nest egg, and paying out as little as possible. But if they have exposure, right? If they have, let's say, $1 million policy with a 25 million excess, and then you're coming out at them, hard and prosecuting, and you're saying, hey, I'm going to go for like, 10 million. And they see you're a real trial lawyer, they might say, let's give him like 6.5, get rid of this guy, because if he goes to court, he could hit us for 30. And then all we have is 25. We can get, everything could get destroyed. So they always look at it that way to protect their money. Okay, let's see. What other questions do we have? Sabrina says, which crashed into, not sure what this is. Oh, I was hit by a falling luggage on my head during an accident. which crashed into a semi hauling cars, falling luggage. Okay, I'm not sure. It depends on where the luggage was falling from. Was it like a car crash or was it something else? It just depends on how it happened and what the what the circumstances are. But feel free to text me 347-566-9595. I'm happy to. Oh, Amtrak. Okay, train. That makes sense. Train. Yeah, I mean, if they didn't secure the luggage, if they were supposed to secure the luggage properly, if they have like workers in Amtrak that secure luggage and they didn't do it and then it fell, yeah, that's negligence. I mean, negligence is really, it's really just a failure to use what's known as reasonable care, and it's what a reasonable person would do. So if it's only on the passenger and the passenger is supposed to secure their own luggage, then it could be difficult because then Amtrak will say, well, it's not us, right? It's the passenger. But if they have people that watch and make sure, kind of like in an airplane, they make sure, hey, overhead bins are all closed, everything is stowed. If they have people like that and they just didn't look and then the luggage just fell over, or if the train was shaking for no reason, it could be a case. Absolutely. Okay, let's see what other questions we have. Gary says, I was involved in a slip and fall. I went to physical therapy for about 5 months. Then after, due to lingering pain, I got an epidural injection in the back and a steroid injection in the knee. How much do you think that's worth? Yeah, so it depends on the slip and fall and the liability, if you can show liability. If it's like a defective, unsafe condition, that's always good. I mean, physical therapy, 5 months with epidurals, I would say in New York, that's worth about anywhere from 25, 30,000 up to like 150. That's probably the most we've settled for, but it could even be worth more than that. I mean, there's not really a set number. It just depends on the overall damage to your life and the overall impact it's had on you. Okay, and then Achille Breeze says, hemilaminectomy from a construction accident. What's the settlement value, if any? Yeah, I mean, a laminectomy is really serious. A construction accident, again, it depends where. Like in New York, they have strict liability, 240, labor law 240. So if it's a fall from a height, the general contractor and the owner is absolutely liable as a matter of law. So then it could be a huge case. Laminectomy on a construction could be, many, many millions. If it's somewhere else, it might be a little different. You have to prove negligence, which isn't necessarily that hard depending on how the accident happened. So you may need to hire a construction safety expert or an engineer, but it could be done. Okay, let's see, what other questions do we have? And then I think I see here, Stephen says, keep speaking life into the people. Oh, awesome, awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, we have a lot of people. We have like, almost 40 people. Wow. Yeah, I was prepping this client in his house, and I was a little bit like late already. It was like 4 something. There was a lot of traffic in New York City, so I figured rather than going to my office, let me just come back and do it from, just doing it from a laptop at home, because so maybe the video quality is not as good. So I apologize for that. But we'll do it again next week with from the regular place in my office, and I have a new 4K camera there, so it's a better video quality. Okay, let's see. Lost in Awareness says, I understand when you switch lawyers, they have to split the fee, but what about the case costs? Am I responsible for that, or does that also get included in the fee the lawyer split? Oh, okay. So yeah, so basically when you switch lawyers, the lawyers split the legal fee, and then the client's piece of the pie stays the same. So for example, if the case gets settled eventually for $1 million, if you had one lawyer and you never changed, you get 700, about, 2/3, and the lawyer gets 1/3, which is close to, let's say, 300,000, right? Now, if you did change and you hired a second lawyer, you still get 700,000. Nothing changes. But the first lawyer gets whatever, maybe 150, and now the second lawyer gets 150. They share the 300. So that's the only, caveat. Now, if they can't agree on how to share the 300, that's their piece of the pie, the legal fee. Even if you had 10 lawyers, 20 lawyers, they all share that 300. You still get the 700. It never changes. But, if you, how the lawyers share it, they either agree, or if they can't agree, they do a hearing before a judge, and the judge decides for them. But in terms of costs, the way it works is, the first lawyer would spend some money, like he would spend $210 to file a lawsuit. He would spend some other money, like service of process. So that money then gets paid by the second lawyer, because once the first lawyer gets a stop work letter, he gets fired. And so the second lawyer has to pay his out-of-pocket disbursements or expenses. So the second lawyer is the new lawyer. They're actually representing you. The first lawyer gets terminated, so the second lawyer pays it. But usually the expenses are small, like $1,000. So then the second lawyer pays that $1,000. The first lawyer sends the file, and the agreement as to the legal fee just gets signed like a stipulation, and then it gets determined at the end of the case when the case settles, either by agreement or by court order, by hearing if they can't agree. So I hope that answers your question. But ultimately, the lawyer can charge you for the expenses, right? Because the lawyer's fronting the expenses, but then ultimately the client is responsible for them. But there's small expenses, like, for example, filing a lawsuit is $210 in New York. Request for judicial intervention is $95. Service of process is like, $100. The only time the expenses get high is if you're already going to trial and then a doctor says, look, I have to cancel all my patients. I'm a spine surgeon. I have to come to court and sit there all day. I want $15,000. Your lawyer pays them $15,000, but that's at the trial stage, so you wouldn't be switching at that point. But yeah, those get paid by the client at the end. And if the case is lost, or if you don't recover enough money, you just don't. Usually, the lawyers they don't charge you. I mean, they're not going to go after you for expenses. So, Okay, Mark says, have you seen future neurodegenerative disease care cost, MS, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's in a TBI plus cervical fusion settlement? No diagnosis yet. Yeah, I mean, if the doctor, it all depends on the doctor, right? If you have a neurologist and the neurologist says, yes, you are going to get, with a medical degree of certainty, it has to be a reasonable degree of medical certainty, you are going to get these things, right? The neurodegenerative diseases, multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, whatever it is. If the doctor writes that in a report, I'm a neurologist, I'm board certified, admitted to practice medicine in the state of New York or whatever state, and with a reasonable degree of medical certainty, you are going to get these things, then yeah, you can get costs for them, of course. Okay, Gugu Brown says, I have a herniated disc. I was rear-ended by an Uber driver who says he was sleeping. Yeah, Uber cases are really good. Actually, my friend just got $6 million in an Uber case, I think on just this week, maybe yesterday, in Los Angeles, in California. So maybe I'll do a video about that. I was one of his first Uber trials. He got $6 million. Uber cases are good. Uber has a lot of insurance. Uber has layers. So like they have, I think, $1 million, then they have another. And I think somebody actually had a big case against them, and they found out that the total coverage is like $200 million or something, some crazy thing. So it's like almost, it's a $45 billion, or was at one point a $45 billion company. I don't know if it's still that, or, we'd have to look. But Uber, yeah, those cases are good. Stephen Barrett says, hey, Arkady, videos are awesome. I texted you earlier today. Why do you make these videos? What motivates you to take the time? No, I just like to help people. I mean, that's like one of my passions. I like to help people, and I like to do as much as I can. And I feel like it's a nice thing to do, and I enjoy it. And it kind of helps me also plan my day and to stay focused, because if I spend all my day just doing, like, say, motions, I'll get so bored because they're all like so monotonous and boring. But this way I get to do some motions, some appeals. Sometimes I go to court, right? I love to do trials, but I don't, I'm not always in trial. So, I'm preparing for that trial April 15th, Monday. But like I said, that's going to get adjourned probably into like May or June. So I'm going to do that one then. And then I have mediations coming up. I have, there's a lot of different things that you do as a lawyer. There's also like marketing and running a business, right? And supervising other people. Like we have a team of 23 people. So we have 8 attorneys. We have offices in the Bronx, 2 offices in Brooklyn. We have Bedford-Stuyvesant, and Bensonhurst is South Brooklyn. Bed-Stuy is North Brooklyn, right near Ridgewood, Queens. So we kind of have that Queens. We also have a Queens office as well in Forest Hills. One of our trial lawyers is there. And then we have the Bronx office where I was today. Well, actually, I was at the client's house, but then I dropped my other trial lawyer, Richard. I dropped him at the Bronx office on the way home. So yeah, so we have about 8 lawyers and 23 people. So it's a lot of supervising them, helping we have a office manager who's been with us so long, and now she's the chief operating officer. She's excellent. So I help her supervise people. We do meetings. So there's a lot of different things, a lot of different hats you have to wear as a lawyer, but it's fun. And I like the videos. I feel like it's helpful, and I feel like I get a good sense of fulfillment if I help somebody. Like I was talking to a lot of people this week, and I was doing some research for them. I was giving them a consultation. And so I'm happy to do it. Yeah, if you need a consultation, just text me 347-566-9595, and just tell me like your name, brief facts of what happened, just so I could see it, almost like I'm watching it on a movie screen or Netflix or whatever, just like watching it happen. And then also tell me your injury as much as you know, or if it's recent, just tell me your symptoms and your city. And that's all I need. And then we could schedule a call. And yeah, I'm happy to chat. Okay, let's see. Google Brown. So I don't think just I don't know if that's a question. Jetwing. Everyone thumbs up for the great Arkady. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Hans says, you were right about even if the adjuster said they are interested in settlement but still play games because I'm still waiting for more than 3 months and the adjuster never got back to my lawyer. Yeah, the adjusters, I mean, I was telling somebody today, like, especially if a lawsuit is not filed, right? There's no lawsuit, it's just a claim. Don't expect a lot of money because the adjuster essentially only has authority maybe up to like 25,000, or maybe it's a little more like 50,000. But they can't even give you like 200 or more. They just can't. They don't have the authority. When you file a lawsuit, they give you a litigation adjuster. Now, usually a litigation adjuster does have authority for more, like 250, let's say. But then if you want more than that, you have to go to their supervisor, and then they might have up to like 500. But then if you want to go up to $1 million, if it's $1 million policy, you might need to go to the next supervisor. And then if you want to, and if it's $1 million primary and you want to get into the umbrella or the excess, and that might be another 5 million, you need to go to that supervisor. You see what I'm saying? So it's just a stepping stone. So they don't really pay that much unless you make them pay. So it's very important to get a trial lawyer. Okay, and then Sabrina says, please repeat the phone number. Oh yeah, sure. I could drop it in the chat as well. It's just 347-566-9595. Yeah, if you text me, the best thing to do is text me and then give me that information, like your name, facts. I mean, you don't have to tell me your full name if you want to keep it confidential. You could just say, John, okay, facts, like I got hit by a truck in the rear, injury, I have a herniated disc with injections, or I might need a surgery, fractured knee, or, surgery, a scope, arthroscopic surgery to my shoulder, whatever it is. And then basically my city, like I'm in Milwaukee or I'm in LA or I'm in New York, or, that's all I need. And then I could schedule a call. I usually try to call people sometimes I get to call people the same day or the next day. I try to do it quickly. Sometimes I get a little busy, but I'll try to do it soon. If it gets really busy, I'll set up like a little calendar link and we could schedule it, by calendar. Okay. And then Steven says, have you ever used animation of the accident? How much does that cost? Is it a good thing? Yeah, we're going to use it in this case, actually, that I'm preparing on April 15th. We already have a company doing an animation. It's going to be an animation of the accident happening and also of the injury. So basically, I'll tell you how it looks. Like, this isn't my case. This is another case that they showed me where they already completed another animation. But basically, it's like a guy is like, say, walking, right? And he's about to sit in a chair. And as he's sitting in a chair, somebody pulls the chair. So he sits and there's no chair and he falls down to the ground. That's the accident. And then it zooms in and it shows his lumbar spine. And then it zooms in and it actually shows the discs and the herniation. And, it's like a 3D color image of the MRI, the actual MRI. So it's really, really good stuff. Yeah, they do an amazing job with animations. You could do it for the accident. If it's a complicated accident, you need an animation to explain how it happened. You could also do it for the injury. And my last trial, the one where we got the 3.5 million, it was a slip and fall. We didn't have an animation on the fall because it was fairly straightforward. He just slipped and fell. But we had an animation for his 3D MRI, and we had a color MRI as well. And it really helps because if you just have the gray MRI, it's really hard to tell like what's what, and it's even hard to understand. Everything is gray, but with the color, you see like the herniation explode and the disc leaking into the nerve. So it's really clear on the color imaging. So it's very good. Okay. And then Laura says, can you please explain injury threshold, car accident in New York 2.5 years ago in physical therapy for the third time? Can a lawyer take a settlement without talking to the client first? No, that's a big no. They shouldn't, because it's your settlement, right? It's your case. The lawyers are representing you. It's like your guide, your counselor, your assistant, basically, your lawyer, right? They have a fiduciary duty to you, so they can't settle without your consent. That's a huge no. But yeah, serious injury threshold, it just basically means that you have to have a serious injury. And the reason they have that is because they pay for all your medical care and treatment up to $50,000. So you get into a car crash, the car you're sitting in, let's say your car has, let's say Geico, right? Geico has to pay, like health insurance, all your medical bills up to 50,000. They also pay for some lost wages. They pay for, things like you break your glasses, they'll pay for that, all that kind of stuff. So then up to 50,000. So that's why it's like a tit for tat, because they give you that. In order to sue, you have to have a serious injury. If you don't have a serious injury, if it's just a little fender bender and you're not seriously hurt, you can't sue. But then the question becomes, what is a serious injury? And that gets really complicated. There are 9 categories, and a fracture qualifies. A significant limitation of a body system or function qualifies. And what that means is if you have 10% range of motion deficit. So for example, like a doctor will say, look, your neck is supposed to be, range of motion is supposed to be, a certain degree, like 90 degrees, and your range of motion is 70 degrees. Well, now you have 20 degrees a loss, that would qualify. An MRI showing a herniation could qualify. But the easiest category, the 9th category, is if you've been substantially incapacitated from doing your normal and customary daily activities for 90 out of the first 180 days after the accident. So that means if you can't do what you normally do for 3 months out of the first 6 months, that you qualify. So it means like if you miss time from work, you go to doctors, you don't do what your customary daily activities. That's usually considered the 90-180 category. That's like one of the easier ones. The other easy ones are the significant limitation. So yeah, it gets a little complicated. There's case law, there's like precedents and cases as to each category. But usually cases don't really get dismissed on serious injury unless you don't get enough treatment. Like if you don't go to a doctor for 3 months, then it could get dismissed. Or if your case is just, if you don't get enough care, it could get dismissed. But usually cases don't get dismissed. I mean, like over my entire career, I've been a lawyer since like 1999, right? So that's about like 25 years. Only had like maybe a few cases get dismissed. And it was maybe like when I first started, when I didn't know what I was doing, or maybe the case just was really weak back then. The people didn't treat, like people would go for like a month and then they would stop. The cases like that, or just have a bulge. But cases don't really get dismissed on serious injury if it's a good case. People get a lot of treatment if it's a serious injury. Oh, Steven says, just had ACDF yesterday, feeling better. Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, ACDF is the anterior cervical discectomy and fusion. That's really serious. That's a full-blown spinal surgery. Those cases are worth, many, many millions of dollars. Okay, and then Big Mac says, how would you handle a small injury from a premise liability? Shopping cart wheels got stuck in a parking lot crack, causing an abrupt jarring stop, causing pain, a couple of weeks of chiropractic. This occurred while awaiting valuable rear end accident trial with disc herniation. Would you just ignore the small injury as not to cause confusion, or would you make the store pay for a chiropractic visit? I mean, if you're already awaiting trial in the other case, you could maybe let that case go to trial and finish that case. You could start getting a little care for this case if you feel like it's an injury. And then when the first case is over, you could try to close out the second case. What you don't want is you don't want to lose the big case, right? The car accident case, and have them say, oh, it's not because of us, we didn't cause it, it's because of the shopping, right? And then each one points the finger at each other. Then it all becomes like muddled, like a soup. And, so you don't want that, because then it'll just cause confusion. But it sounds like you're saying that the second case is a valuable case. I mean, I'm sorry, the rear end case, the car crash case, is a valuable case, and it's already going to trial. So it sounds like whatever you had from that is distinct from what you have from the shopping cart. So I would probably focus more on that, on the bigger one. Okay, and then Shaq says, what happens when a person lies about liability in a rear end collision? I'm going through that right now. Yeah, I mean, people always like, for example, like your question of lights case. You say you had the green light, but hey, the defendant who hit you says they had the green light. So now a lot of people have these dash cams, so you could use that footage. That'll prove who's lying. Otherwise, look, if you don't have cameras and one person says they had the green, the other person says they had the green, whoever the jury believes, or sometimes it's 50-50. There's not really any way to prove it conclusively. I mean, of course, you could ask questions like, where were you looking? How far away were you? How much time passed? How much distance passed from when you first saw the car until the crash? There's a lot of questions, but there's no real way to, prove it unless there's video. Okay, and then Shaq says, how much could a settlement for an 18-wheeler crash with a herniated disc in the neck and a lot of back pain, but no surgery, recommended be without going to trial, and insurance agrees was totally at fault. So it's an 18-wheeler crash. There's a herniated disc in the neck, and there's a lot of pain, but no surgery. I mean, that could still be a big case. I did a video recently about somebody in Colorado, and they got like 3 million on a soft tissue case, no recommendation for surgery. So it's possible. I mean, you'd have to really, he did a good workup, and he told like a human story, and he got to know the client, and he wasn't afraid to go to trial. But it's possible. I mean, of course, I'm not going to say every case, with the soft tissue is going to go for 3 million, but usually I would say, look, I had an 18-wheeler crash with a guy who just had a herniation, and he had like an epidural, a pain relief injection, basically. And I think we got about 150,000. That was many years ago. That was more than a decade ago. Maybe now, I feel like I'm a little better. I probably do more better than that. Okay, and then Maunaralu says, what happens if the defendant's summary judgment is denied? Is trial next? Yeah, well, you want it to be denied, because if it's a defendant's motion and it gets granted, that means the case is dismissed, right? Because summary judgment just means that you get judgment as a matter of law, that there's no reason to go to a jury and have a trial, because a jury decides questions of fact. But if the judge says as a matter of law this issue is decided, there's no reason to even go to a jury. There's no question of fact to be decided by a jury. So you don't want that. You want to get it for yourself, right? Because, like, for example, you're stopped at a red light, you get rear-ended. Now you have summary judgment. That means there's no question to be decided by a jury. I'm stopped at a red light, I got rear-ended. It's clearly the defendant's fault. So that's a good thing. But if it's the opposite, what they're doing is they're saying that, you can't prove your case as a matter of law. There is no case, and then they try to dismiss. You don't want that. Okay, and then Laura says, thank you. I will text you later. You lifted a weight off of me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, see, this is why I do it. People try to ask me, well, how do I do these videos? So this is why I do it. See, to help people. I love that. I love being able to help people and lift the weight off someone. I feel like a sense of reward, and, I'm passionate about it. Okay, and then Lost in Awareness says, will an insurance company take a case to trial that they know they're going to lose because they don't believe a jury will give you what you're asking for? Or is that case more likely to settle? Okay, let me see if I can understand. So an insurance company is taking a case to trial that they know they're going to lose because they don't believe a jury will give you what you're asking for. Yeah, they could do that, right? So they know that they're going to lose in terms of, like, they're at fault. Let's say, like, somebody is stopped at a red light and a tractor trailer hits them in the rear. They know, hey, we can't win this case. It's worth something. The client might have a TBI or a spinal fusion or another injury like an open reduction internal fixation or whatever. We can't win the case. Obviously, we're at fault, but we don't think it's worth 20 million. And this guy's asking for 20 million. So yeah, let's go to trial, and I'll tell the jury that it's worth 1 million, but not 20 million. Yeah, you can do that, of course. That's a lot of the fights are about value, about how much to pay. And by the way, I don't think a lawyer, a good trial lawyer, should go into court and ask for anything, right? Because when you're asking, you're begging. You're like, oh, please, can I get 20 million? No, you have to tell them. You have to say, civil justice in this case, full justice in this case is $20 million. That's what it's worth. And you have to be confident. And then look, you tell them, you're the jury. You have to make a decision. You go into a deliberation room, and then you deliberate and you decide, and you talk to each other, and you talk to each other, and you explain to each other, why do you feel the way you do? And look, you come to that group decision, and you could say it's worth 20 million. You could say it's worth more. You could say it's worth less. But I believe civil justice is this. And you explain to them why. Like, I have medical expenses, I have lost wages, I have future medical expenses, I have future pain and suffering, past pain and suffering, all together, all these categories. That's what they add up to. So, but yeah, I always tell them what it's worth. Don't ask. And there's another way to say it. I have to look, because when I was in that conference in Santa Barbara, the lawyer had another way to say it. Because I like to say, like, civil justice is, and you tell them a number, but he had another way to say it. I forget now what it was, but I have it in my notes. I'll do a video about it. But yeah, no, it's good. It depends what you feel comfortable with. You got to be comfortable with the money. You don't want, you have to believe it too. Like, if you don't believe, like, for example, if I believe a case is worth, let's say, 10 million, fine. I'll go into court. I'll say, look, this case is worth 10 million. Civil justice, full justice is 10 million. But if I don't believe it, if for example, if the same case, they tell me, you go in and you tell them it's 38 million, but I don't believe it's 38 million. I'm going to be up there. I'm going to, this case was 38 million. It's not going to sound right, and then you have to really believe it in your heart. Then you can get it. because it's a lot of money, but it's not just money, it's money to compensate someone for all the harms and losses, everything that they've lost. It's the equal trade dollar value of taking all this health and life and freedom away from someone. So yeah, so that's okay. And then Diego says, "Hey, I just settled for 700K. My medical bills are 90K. What do you think I'll go home with? I had 5 herniated discs. I only had 4 back injections. Do you think that's a good settlement number?" Yeah, I mean, if it was just injections, I think that's pretty good. 700, and you're going to have 90K in medical bills. I mean, it depends on, like, in New York, medical bills don't come out of the settlement because we have no fault. But if they do in your state, then I guess you have to pay the medical bills. So then, the attorney should take about a third. So the attorney will tell you. I mean, before you sign the release to settle, the attorney should tell you how much you're going to get in your pocket. Otherwise, you're signing, but you don't know what you're going to get. It doesn't make sense. So just ask them. But yeah, it should be roughly a third of the legal fee, and then medical bills you might have to pay back. So I think that's a pretty good settlement. Depends on what kind of injections. I don't know if it was a percutaneous or a epidural. If it's just epidurals, that's great. That's a lot. That's a really good number. Okay, and then INTL Shaq says, "Yes, thank you a lot because you give people a lot of relief and hope." Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And then Shaq says, "Diego, you are probably taking home almost 400K. Yeah, right. About a third goes to the lawyer, and then you should take home the rest. And then Derek says, "The amount of times you've had a procedure done increase the value. For example, I know by having an epidural steroid injection, it will increase the value, but how would it affect the settlement amount?" No, it doesn't really matter. I mean, epidurals, like I explained, they're just pain relief, right? So if you do, like, usually they're done medically a series of 3. So if you do 3 and it doesn't help you, it's better to do the next thing, like a percutaneous discectomy, which is more of a discectomy where they remove the leak from the disc and decompress the disc, and they get rid of the injury. I would do that. That would make the case jump from, let's say, 100, 150 up to like maybe 500. If you just keep doing epidurals, it's like taking a Tylenol for a headache. If you have a headache, but you don't know the cause of the headache, and you just keep taking a Tylenol, you're like masking it. You're putting pain relief on it, but you're not getting rid of the underlying problem. And so it's not really going to increase value too much. Okay, Aseni says, "What to do after a hit and run and I was able to snap a picture of the at-fault driver. He later denied to his insurance company that he rear-ended me and fled." Well, if you have a picture, just send them the picture and of the license. That's good. Then you can locate him through a search. Like we have DMV searches in New York, and then we can find out which insurance company they have. If you have dash cam, that's even better because then you could prove that it happened. But yeah, people do that. Sometimes they say, "Oh, it wasn't me," or people make up all kinds of stuff. It's crazy. Okay, and then Lost in Awareness says, "Do you think it's stronger to mention the value in your opening or closing?" I mean, I think it depends on the case, but I think, like, lately I've seen a lot of the top lawyers are mentioning it in the opening, right in the beginning. Like, there was a $25 million brain injury case, and the lawyer right in the beginning in the opening said it's 25 million, and then he said it again in closing. In closing, a little bit more, like they really explain it in depth, each category, how it adds up to 25 million. But in opening, he just said it's 25 million. I don't want to surprise you. I want to be straight up and honest with you. I want to tell you what it is, and it's 25 million. And I think it's good because, the opposite thing, like there was this story, like in Brooklyn, in Kings County, they have this lawyers lounge down in the first floor, and lawyers sit there, they read the paper, and they talk to each other, they tell jokes or whatever, stories. And somebody was talking about this lawyer. He was trying a case, and he was claiming that there was a brain injury, but he wasn't doing a good job. He didn't have any witnesses. He didn't have any, I don't know, doctors were weak. Everything was weak. And he never told the jury what he was asking for. And then in his closing, I think he asked for like 7 million, and the jurors started laughing, and then the jurors gave him like 0 or, I don't know, maybe 1,000, something really, really low. So I always think it's better right in the opening to just be vulnerable and be truthful, be authentic, and say, "Look, I believe this case is worth 25 million, but you guys have all the power. You're the jury. You could give more, you could give what I recommend, or you could give less." And, the judge will say that as well, because there's a pattern jury instruction where the judge tells the jury, you don't have to listen to the lawyer. You could listen to the lawyer, but you are the ultimate trier of the facts. So you don't have to listen to a lawyer's recommendation. So like you're kind of telling them, and the judge is telling them again, right? So, but I really think it's better to tell them in opening, because if you tell them in opening, what are they going to do? I mean, like, they already know, so they're already like expecting it, and then you're just consistent throughout the trial, as opposed to not saying anything, and then at the end you're saying a number, and then they're all thinking this is maybe he has a little boo boo, and this is worth like 10K, 10,000, and you're all of a sudden you're saying 7 million. They're like, what the hell? You know what I mean? They're all on, let's say, Earth, and you're on like over here, like on Pluto. You're on different planets. You don't want that. So I think it's better to just tell them. Okay. And then Derek says, I already had that surgery. Okay. Yeah. I think he's talking about the percutaneous. And Steven says, in California, is there no fault? What is no fault? Yeah, so no fault is just a method of paying your medical bills. So, for example, you get into a car crash. No fault just means the car that you're sitting in, the automobile insurance policy, right? Whether it's Progressive, Allstate, Geico, State Farm, doesn't matter. Your insurance will pay all your medical bills up to $50,000. They have that in New York. It's also called personal injury protection. In California, I'm actually not sure. They might have it. They might. I'm not sure, because I don't practice in California, but we could find out. We could just Google it and find out. Yeah, but that's basically no fault. And then Omar says, insurance has invited me to a settlement conference. We haven't had any deposition, haven't shared medical files. Oncoming truck crossed the median and slammed into oncoming traffic. Oh, wow. Go or no go? Well, if you haven't given them any medicals, I wouldn't do the settlement. Why do the settlement? What are they going to base it on? Finish your medical care. Have your lawyer send them a settlement, opportunity letter, not a demand. I don't like the word demand, because again, it's like asking, it's like begging, demanding. Don't play the demand game. You start high, and they say that's too high, and then they drag you down. Like, you say, I want 1 million, and they say that's too high. How about you ask for 100? And I have like 15 for you, but if you ask for 100, I'll go to 50. Don't play that game, because once you're at 100, that's it, right? Out of the million, they've already secured 900 and put it in their pocket, or invested it in stocks, or crypto, whatever they do. And they're billion-dollar companies. They make, like, I think there was somebody talking about State Farm, and they made like 98 billion in 1 year or something. So you know what I'm saying? They invest that money, and the money just grows and grows and grows. But when you have a real life-changing injury, they don't want to pay for it. And they want you to demand so that they could whittle you down, drag you down, and pay as little as possible. So what I would do is, like, first finish all your treatment, so you know what your injury is, clearly been diagnosed. You've had all your surgeries, whatever you're going to have, pain management. Then get all your medical records, send a settlement opportunity letter. You could, have your lawyer review it, make sure you have a real trial lawyer, find out how much insurance they have, file a lawsuit, see if they have excess and umbrella beyond the primary. So, if you're saying this is a truck, right? So they might have 1 million primary, but then they might have another like 5 million excess. If it's a big trucking company like Werner or JB Hunt, whatever, or even smaller companies have excess and umbrella sometimes. So once you know what it is, send them a letter, and then do a focus group, or have your lawyer like research other cases, like in the Westlaw, Lexis, jury verdict reporter, and then say, look, this case is worth, for example, 5 million. Pay me the 5 million within 30 days, right? By May 11th, 2024 at 5 p.m. At 5:01 p.m., the 5 million's off the table. The opportunity expires. It's just like the train left the station. There'll never be another opportunity to settle for 5 million, which is your policy limits. Then the minimum at that point, at May 11th, 5:01 p.m., the minimum will be 7.5 million. And just negotiate like that from a position of strength. Now, it doesn't have to be those numbers. Maybe the case is worth less, right? So it'd be 500,000, 1 million, whatever it is. But I'm just giving an example. But that's a better way to do it, as opposed to starting with a demand, having them drag you down into the dungeon, and don't do that. Okay. And then Nima says, I was being hospitalized after being rear-ended, and an MRI, I had 4 fractures on my back as a result of the accident, and insurance still claims I'm faking my injury. What should I do? Yeah, so you were being hospitalized and you had a rear end, and the MRI shows 4 fractures in your spine. Oh my God, that's terrible. I just settled the case with 1 fracture. It was a minor fracture, and we got like 500,000 as a result of the accident. What do you mean they're claiming you're faking? I mean, they claim everybody's faking. That's their mantra. It's their song and dance. Just get a trial lawyer and sue them and win. Go to trial. Call me, text me, 347-566-9595. I'll help you. If you're in, New York, I'll help you myself. If you're in another place, I'll find someone for you if you need someone. or if you're confident in your lawyer, just meet with them. But the best way to, you know, to combat this faking defense is just to use community witnesses, right? People from your life, like your neighbors, your friends, your family, to talk about who you were before versus who you are after this crash and paint a picture of your life. And that will destroy their ability to say that you're a liar, a cheater, and a fraud, and somebody who's coming in here to win the lawsuit lottery, right? Because if you're the only person in the courtroom and you're saying, I can't do this and I can't do that, it's almost like you're not you, but any person, right? Any plaintiff becomes a whiner and a malingerer and a complainer. And nobody likes a whiner, right? Nobody likes a malingerer or a complainer. People don't like depression and sadness. People like stories of hope that you're going to overcome obstacles, you're going to do something great. And despite your injury, you're still going to try. Nobody likes anyone who gives up, right? But if you have yourself talking about this hope story, a happy story, despite all these injuries, I'm still going to try to do whatever I love to do, my work, my hobbies, whatever it is, my family. It basically comes down to two simple things: who do you love, and what do you love? What are your passions? You could love sports, you could love knitting, whatever, cooking. It could be anything, right? And who do you love? It could be your wife, your husband, your sister, your brother, your kids. It could be a girlfriend, boyfriend. It could be platonic. It could be like your puppy. Whatever. I like to walk my puppy. I can't walk my puppy. Anything, right? So who do you love and what do you love? So that's what it comes down to. Now, in order to destroy this defense that you're faking, the best way to do it is use these witnesses. Because wait a minute, you call like 10 people from your life, all 10 are lying. I mean, come on, it's going to be impossible for them to prove that. And they have no cross-examination. What are they going to say to these people? They have no proof, So, but yeah, text me I'll be happy to chat with you. I always do like a free confidential consult. It's 347-566-9595. And then Omar says, since the insurance company invited to settlement conference so early without sharing med files for a deposition, would this be considered good faith from the insurance company? No, not necessarily. I mean, look, if they invited you that early and they don't even have the medical records, what they're probably trying to do is lowball you and give you like, you might have a case worth $1 million and they're trying to give you like 10 grand. I had that happen with a nice guy from West Virginia. He was texting with me and then he was telling me that he had like a serious injury, like a torn something or other, something that I think would be worth, like in New York, it would be worth like 200K. And they were trying to get rid of it for like 10 or 11K, 10 or 11,000. It's ridiculous. Okay, and then KCV says, do you think it's a compelling human story for someone getting treatment for depression after an MTBI, other speech and vestibular and headache symptoms resolved after a year, but depression lingers on? Yeah, I mean, that's a real compelling human story. That's actually really good to do for a TBI. You definitely want those community witnesses, like circle of friends, like people that knew you before, that could say, look, before they were really sharp and they didn't have any issues with balance or and now they have issues with vestibular, like balance. They have issues with headaches. They have depression. Before they were happy, now they're sad. Everything's changed about them. It's almost like, I think one lawyer, when he did it, he said the person that walked in, because the person walked into somewhere, he got hurt, and then he had to like walk out or stumble out because after the head injury. And they said the person who walked into that building was not the same person who walked out. It was a different man. It was a different person. So that's what a TBI does. It changes who you are. So yeah, absolutely use those witnesses, like whatever you have, 3 or 5 or 10, each one just tells a story for 5 or 10 minutes, really simple. And that's it. And then of course use doctors too, neurologist, neuroradiologist, like a MRI doctor, or a DTI, diffusion tensor imaging. And then you also use a neuropsychologist as well. Leonardo is here. Hi, how are you? I was just talking about you with Rick. I saw Rick today. We were chatting about you. He mentioned your case. Nima is here. I live in California. I'll contact you. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. I'd be happy to help. And actually in California, I know amazing trial lawyers. I was just out there trading with some of them in Santa Barbara. So I really like that place, by the way. Santa Barbara, beautiful city. Gary says, thanks for everything. Another question. How do I ask my lawyer what's the premises insurance amount? Yeah, just ask them, what's the insurance? They have to tell you. Once you file a lawsuit, they have to tell you in discovery. So you want to know the primary and the excess or umbrella, everything. And then let's see what other questions. Oseni says, does the fact that someone's wife brings up loss of consortium lawsuit along with the primary injury case help the jury to believe that the main injuries are serious? Yeah, I mean, I think so. I like loss of consortium. Now, there's a big dispute about that too, right? Because the old school is, oh, don't bring up loss of consortium because it could drag down the value. People are going to say, you're the wife and you weren't hurt. It was your husband who was hurt, but you're trying to get a payday. You're trying to get money for your husband's injuries, and you weren't even hurt. So, you shouldn't do it. And a lot of lawyers are afraid to do it. But the new style, like there's a lawyer actually in California, I think her name is Ibieri Sek. She's a really good lawyer. She actually represents, the wife in these loss of consortium, or the husband if the wife gets hurt, vice versa. She represents the spouse. She does a great job, and she basically says, look, and there's other lawyers too that do it, and they stand up and they say, I'm here, I represent the marriage. It's not about representing the person or getting money, for my husband's injury. I'm not trying to win a payday or a lottery because my husband got hurt. But look, my husband got hurt, and we had certain roles. My husband would, go to work. He would bring home money. He would go shopping. He would do certain things around the house, like fix things, or fix the garage door, or fix play sports with my son, throw the football, throw baseball. I can't teach my son how to throw a baseball or how to swing the bat. So plus, of course, you have intimate relations, like sexual things. There's a lot of things in a marriage, and I represent the marriage, and what is that worth to lose a marriage? So I think that if you do it the right way, loss of consortium could be a huge claim, but it has to be done the right way, and you have to know how to destroy the BS defenses of the insurance company, and don't be afraid of them. Okay, and then Omar says, thank you for your insight, super helpful. Thank you. Bag Boys says, talk to my lawyer. They said the insurance company didn't have to say if they had access an umbrella, but I'm about to have an ACDF, so I'm wondering if we're only going to be able to get the primary. No, they do have to say, just file a lawsuit. I mean, they don't have to tell you in some states. Like in New York, they have to tell you, I believe, even without a lawsuit, because there's insurance law 3420F. And they have to tell you, and you could file a complaint with the Department of Insurance. But in some states, like in New Jersey, they don't have to tell you. So if you're in a state where they're not obligated to tell you, you could still find out by filing a lawsuit. They always have to tell you when you file a lawsuit. So just file a lawsuit and they'll tell you. It's really simple. But I mean, if you need a consultation, just text me. I'm happy to help, But yeah, that's not a big deal. They'll tell you. And KCV again says, insurance company of the driver that hit me offered me $400, I believe, the day after the accident. I literally laughed when I said no. Oh yeah, people do that. They don't want insurance to get involved, so they just offer a few $100. They say, hey, they're scared their rates are going to go up. So yeah, you have to be. I mean, if it's a serious injury, of course, yeah, don't do that. That's crazy. Okay, S. Sadia Benfares says, hello, Mr. Frekhtman. I noticed that some people videotape me in the train after my deposition, despite it being 2 years now that I returned back to work. It's that people spy on me on behalf of insurance. I mean, it could be, usually the insurance company will hire a retired detective. I mean, I haven't really heard too much of it happening on the train. Usually what they do is they sit outside your door, like your house or your apartment, and they'll be in a car and they'll have a newspaper and a coffee and a donut, because they're a detective, they're a cop. So of course they'll have a donut and they'll be sitting there with a newspaper. And then, you come out and they'll have a picture of you, maybe from your IME or from the file, or maybe they can find a picture online. And so they'll be like, hey, that's him. And then they'll start tailing you. And if you start doing something, they'll videotape you. And then they'll videotape their newspaper that it's the date, to get the date correct and things like that. So yeah, they stake you out, basically, private investigators or retired cops or whatever. They do it. But again, I wouldn't worry about that. Like I talked about earlier in this video, I wouldn't really worry about that as long as you're not doing the things that you testified you could not do, right? So just, be honest, and that's all it is. Okay, and then Abdul Kader says, is the attorneys hiring the expert to build the case right after get the case or after file the lawsuit? Yeah, it could be either one. I mean, you could hire experts. It depends what kind of experts. I mean, doctors, are going to be treating doctors, so doctors should be hired probably right away. Like, for example, a pain management doctor who does a discectomy, or even a doctor who does a spinal fusion. You would have that doctor right away because you're getting treatment, so you'd have that doctor on your case. Now, if it's an expert like an engineer, you might want to do it right away. If it's like somebody fell and there's some kind of condition and you want an engineer to inspect it, and you want to do it, at the time of the of the incident, because if you do it like a year later, they're going to say, well, what does that prove? It's all different now. So yeah, I would say the earlier you get experts, the better in general. So yeah, I would do it earlier. Okay. And then Leonardo says, oh, great. Bring Mr. Richard to any live. Oh, yeah, we almost did one today. I should have probably stayed at his office and just did one with him. I didn't know if he had all the technology there, but probably he does. Maybe next week we'll try to do one. I don't know if I could do one live via Zoom, because he'll be in his office and I'll be in my office. We could do one by Zoom together. Or if not, then maybe next time we're in the same place, we'll do one together. And Amin says, thanks for the call. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was one of the people I spoke with today. Thank you. And Joshua says, I was hit by a commercial vehicle car and I had an MRI and completed my therapy. What do you think I'm looking at? Well, a commercial vehicle, is good. That usually has like a million policy or a large policy. I'd have to know where you are, like what city, what's the date of the crash, what's your age, what's the actual MRI diagnosis. Completing an MRI just means you had one, but it's what did it find? Did it find a herniation or a bulge? So I'd have to speak with you. But yeah, just text me 347-566-9595. Happy to chat. It's always free and confidential. Omar says, would an insurance company start the videotaping before the deposition? How early does this surveillance begin? I mean, they usually don't videotape you before, because like the whole idea is you say you can't do something. Like, for example, you say, I can't go fishing in your deposition, right? You've testified to it. The stenographer writes it down. It's in there, like page 34, line 18. I cannot go fishing. Okay, done, right? Deposition is done. A week later, you're out there on the beach fishing with your pole and you're catching big striped bass. Wait a minute, this guy's lying, right? So that they want that video. But if they haven't had a deposition, it doesn't really, I mean, of course, if you were like have a serious injury, a brain injury, or I don't know, a spinal fusion, and you're out there like playing basketball, dunking, maybe they don't need a deposition. Maybe the video speaks for itself. But I think that, usually it's after the deposition. Okay, let's see, what question are we up to? So Joshua says rear-ended in Alabama. Yeah, actually, I've done a few cases in Alabama. Yeah, I'm happy to. I just had a client, I think, that told me today that they hired a lawyer I recommended in Arkansas, and it was a really good truck crash lawyer. So that was good, a trial lawyer. So that was good. Alabama, I believe I know some lawyers too, good lawyers. Anar says, I had a truck accident, spinal fusion surgery, L3, L4, L4, L5. Yeah, that's pretty serious. That's really serious. We are waiting for the first quote from the Amazon specialist. How much do you think it can offer? The accident happened in New Jersey. I mean, look, if it's a truck crash, again, the first step is find out the primary and find out the excess. If it's Amazon, they probably have like 100 million. So if you have that kind of surgery, do the human story, get the witnesses, get all your doctors lined up. It could be big. It could be like, 3-5 million, maybe more. It could be a huge case. You just have to work it up the right way. It has to be built up the right way. It could be huge. Yeah. Mohammed says, Mr. Arkady rear-end accident took place 6.5 years ago, still under treatment. Now the doctor says the fusion is needed. Is it too late? I mean, you could do it if you feel like you need it and you feel like it's going to help you. I mean, a fusion is a real serious thing, but if you've done everything else, like usually people start with physical therapy. If that doesn't help, they do the epidural. If that doesn't help, they do the percutaneous discectomy. If that doesn't help, and the doctor says, look, your only option is either a fusion or a disc replacement. Well, then that becomes the only option. Then you have to do it. So it's up to you. It's up to you. It's up to the doctor. I can't really tell you. The fact that you're doing it later is going to be a little bit weaker, but it doesn't mean you can't do it. You can still do it. And as long as you show the natural progression and you make a timeline and you say, look, I've tried everything else. I tried to avoid the fusion, but now finally it's my last resort. I have to do it. And then you can get full value and also find out how much insurance they have. And then Omar says, thank you. You are the real deal. Incredible human, Mr. Frekhtman. Oh, thank you so much. That's really helped. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And then Kenneth says, do you have to go with your lawyer to mediation? You don't have to. I mean, a lot of times it's good to go or appear by Zoom. Now they do it by Zoom. But, it's good to go so the lawyer could kind of tell you what's happening. But you don't have to. The lawyer could do it and the lawyer could just tell you what happened. And then Andre says, I want a slip and fall case in Westchester County, which is rare. Will it have an effect on my trying to apply for SSI DI disability benefits? Depends on how much you won. I think with SSDI, Social Security Disability, there might be certain income or certain monetary limits. Like for example, if you have, I think it's need based. Maybe I'm wrong, but I know some of the programs. I don't do Social Security, so don't quote me on this. But I would ask a Social Security lawyer But I know some programs are need based. So if you have a need, they give it to you, right? Like Medicare or Social Security. Disability or Medicaid. Now, if you don't have a need, like for example, you win a case, I have $1 million, you don't have a need anymore. Okay, well now then you're not going to get the program anymore, just like welfare or other programs. But then if you spend down the money, sometimes you could spend it down in a trust or spend it down where you could show you don't have it anymore. Then you have a need again, then the program could start again. But I would ask somebody who specializes in that. And then Joshua says, will a car commercial vehicle have the same coverage as if it was a truck commercial vehicle? I mean, it's possible. See, every vehicle has different insurance. So it just depends. Like a car, even though it's commercial just means it's a company, right? So if it's Amazon, it could be an Amazon small van, but they might have like 100 million because it's Amazon. Whereas you could have a big truck, but if it's a one-person truck, and maybe they let their insurance lapse and they have no insurance at all. Like I had a client and we looked up the insurance. Unfortunately, there was no insurance. I mean, we're going to keep digging and try to figure out, but even though it was a truck, I think they illegally drove it and they had no insurance at all. It's great. You never know. It's just whatever they have. So you have to each vehicle has their own insurance, but usually companies will have more because they're commercial, they're companies, but it depends on the company. Like some companies will have 750 or $1 million, and that's it. And some companies like Amazon or Uber could have hundreds of millions or unlimited coverage. Okay, I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for being here. Please like and subscribe to our channel. Let us know what questions you have. We are here for you. Our goal is helping serious injury victims and families. Have a great night, everybody. Stay safe out there. If you're injured, I hope you feel better. That's the most important thing, your health. And we will be back next week. And we're also going to do a few more videos. And again, if you have any videos you would like us to do, just let us know and we'll do them. So talk to you very soon. Have a great night, everybody. Bye-bye.